All right, so let's just jump right into this shit. Today, we're going deep on human design, specifically the 1-3 profile, the investigator martyr. It's about understanding that blueprint you were born with, how you tick.
Yeah.
What makes you, well.
Yeah. And it's not about like slapping a label on you either. It's about digging into those core motivations,
Right.
The things that light your fire and how they can get a little fucked up sometimes.
Exactly. We're talking about transference, where your natural way of doing things gets all messed up. But before we get into that mess, let's start with the basics. We're pulling a lot from Duone's book, Beyond the 12 Profiles. You can find him online. The dude's got a wealth of knowledge on this stuff.
Yeah, so Humandesign uses this ancient system called the I Ching to map out your energy. It's based on your birth date, time, and place, and it spits out this crazy detailed chart that's basically like a user manual for your life.
Okay, so we've got the I Ching, this cosmic energy blueprint.
Yeah.
And then we've got profiles, right?
Exactly. Your profile is like a personality archetype. It's derived from 2 lines in the I Ching. There are 12 basic ones, and then some transitional ones that bridge the gap. So the 1-3 is one of those basic profiles.
Okay, guys. So what makes the 1-3 profile, the investigator martyr, so damn special?
Well, the 1-3 is all about fear, man, but not the kind that paralyzes you. It's more like a motivator, a push to figure shit out, to master things. They're constantly questioning, testing, learning from their screw-ups.
So it's like they're driven by this need to understand the world, to find their place in it. And fear is what fuels that drive.
Exactly. Think of them as those friends who are always researching, experimenting, going down rabbit holes. They're not afraid to fall flat on their faces because they know that's how you learn.
Makes sense. But you mentioned that their motivations can get a little messed up. That's where transference comes in, right?
Right. See, on top of the 12 profiles, there's this whole color system. That adds another layer. It's like each profile has different variations based on your color, which represents your hidden motivations.
Okay, hold up. How does color play into all of this?
Well, Duone breaks this down in his book. But basically, there are 6 colors, each representing a different driving force. And depending on your color, your 1-3 profile is going to express itself in a specific way.
Right, so let's dive into these colors. What kind of variations are we talking about here?
Well, for the 1-3 profile, the first color is ironically fear. This is like the purest expression of the investigator martyr. They're driven by this insatiable curiosity, always digging for knowledge and testing boundaries.
So they're like those mad scientists who are always blowing shit up in their labs, trying to figure out how the universe works.
Exactly. They're not afraid of making mistakes. They're actually kind of addicted to them because they see them as opportunities to learn and grow.
Okay, I can see how that could be a strength. But how does it get messed up with transference?
With the first color. The 1-3 can experience a transference to need, which is the 4th color. Instead of being motivated by a pure desire to understand, they start needing validation from others to feel good about themselves.
So they're still driven by fear, but now it's like, do people think I'm smart enough? Am I doing this right? That kind of thing.
Yeah, it becomes less about the pursuit of knowledge for its own sake and more about seeking approval and security. It's like their inner compass gets all wonky.
So how does this transference actually play out in their lives? Give me some real-world examples.
Okay, let's say you've got a 1-3 who's a researcher, right? Naturally, they're driven by the thrill of discovery. But with this transference to need, they might start chasing grants and accolades instead of focusing on the research itself. They're more worried about looking good than actually doing good work.
Yeah, that's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
What about other ways this transference can manifest?
Imagine a 1-3 artist. They're usually bursting with creativity, not giving a shit what others think. But when need takes over, they might become obsessed with pleasing critics and following trends, losing their unique voice in the process.
So basically, transference can turn their strengths into weaknesses if they're not careful. It's like they're betraying their own nature.
Exactly. It's not that needing validation is inherently bad, but for the 1-3, it can pull them away from that pure, fearless drive. That makes them so damn unique.
Okay, so we've got the 1-3 with fear, and we've seen how that can get twisted with transference to need. What about the other colors? What other flavors of 1-3 are out there?
All right, let's move on to the second color for the 1-3 profile, which is hope. Now, this might sound a bit less intense than fear, right? But it's still a powerful motivator for these folks.
So we're talking about a 1-3 who's a bit more optimistic, maybe less prone to those late-night existential crises.
Exactly. The 1-3 with hope is still driven to learn and master things, but they approach it with this underlying belief that things can get better, that knowledge can lead to positive change.
They're like those teachers who can make even the most boring subjects come alive. The ones who inspire you to actually give a shit about learning.
Right on. They're driven by this desire to share their knowledge, to help others see the world in a new light. They're not just figuring shit out for themselves. They want to bring everyone along for the ride.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But you said there's a transference thing with every color, right? What happens when hope goes sideways for the 1-3?
Well, with hope, the transference is to guilt, the 5th color. And let me tell you, that shit can get heavy.
Guilt. How does that even work?
Imagine this. The 1-3 with hope is all about making things better, right? But with the guilt transference, they start taking on the weight of the world's problems. It's like they feel personally responsible for fixing everything that's broken.
Damn, that sounds exhausting. So instead of inspiring others, they're just drowning in guilt.
Pretty much. They might overwork themselves, overcommit to projects, neglect their own needs, all because they feel like they're not doing enough to make things right.
So it's like their optimism backfires.
Yeah.
And turns into this heavy burden of responsibility.
Exactly. It's important for these 1-3s to recognize when that guilt transference is taking over. They need to learn to set boundaries, to prioritize their own well-being, and to remember that they can't save the world alone.
All right, let's move on to the next flavor. What's the 3rd color for the 1-3 profile?
That would be desire, my friend. And this is where things get a little spicy.
Desire. So we're talking about a 1-3 who's not just driven by fear or hope, but by pure passion and a thirst for experience.
You got it. These 1-3s are all about diving headfirst into life, feeling everything intensely. They're not just observing the world. They want to taste it, touch it, devour it whole.
They're like the rock stars of human design, living life on their own terms, always pushing the boundaries.
Exactly. They have this magnetic energy that draws others to them. They're the life of the party, the risk takers, the ones who are always up for an adventure.
Sounds like a wild ride.
Yeah.
But what happens when desire goes haywire with transference?
Well, with desire, the transference is to innocence, the 6th color. It's like going from I want it all to I want nothing.
Whoa, that's a drastic shift. How does that even happen?
Imagine this. The 1-3 with desire is usually so passionate, so driven. But when innocence takes over, they might start to feel disillusioned with all the chasing, all the striving. They might withdraw from the world, feeling like nothing really matters anymore.
So it's like they get burnt out on all the intensity and just want to check out, kind of like a spiritual hangover.
Yeah, something like that. They might lose their spark, their zest for life. It's important for these 1-3s to recognize this transference and reconnect with what truly lights them up. They need to find ways to nurture their passion without getting consumed by it.
Okay, we're halfway through the colors. What's up next for the 1-3 profile?
Next up is need, the 4th color. And this is where we see the 1-3's practical side come out to play.
Need. So these 1-3s are less about the philosophical stuff and more about getting shit done.
You could say that. The 1-3 with need is all about finding solutions, making things better, both for themselves and for others. They're the problem solvers, the fixers, the ones who are always looking for ways to improve systems and relationships.
So like those friends who are always there to help you move, fix your leaky faucet,
Yeah.
or troubleshoot your computer problems. They just get shit done.
Right on. They're practical, resourceful, and they have this deep desire to be helpful. They're not afraid to roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty.
Okay, I can see how that could be a valuable trait. But what happens when need gets messed up with transference?
Well, with need, the transference is to fear, the 1st color. It's like they become afraid of their own need to fix things.
Wait, what? How does that even make sense?
Think about it this way. The 1-3 with need is naturally driven to find solutions right. But when fear takes over, they might start to doubt their abilities. They might become afraid of making things worse, of failing to live up to their own expectations.
So instead of being helpful, they become paralyzed by fear, like they're stuck in analysis paralysis.
Exactly. They might overthink things, procrastinate, or avoid taking action altogether. It's important for these 1-3s to remember that it's okay to not have all the answers, that mistakes are part of the learning process, and that their desire to help is a valuable gift, even if it doesn't always go perfectly.
All right, we're getting down to the wire here. What's the 5th color for the 1-3 profile?
That would be guilt, my friend. And this is where things get a little heavy again.
Guilt. We already talked about guilt with the hope transference, right?
Right. But with the 1-3 who's naturally motivated by guilt, It's like their default setting. They carry this heavy sense of responsibility for the state of the world, and they're constantly striving to make things right.
So they're like the activists, the social justice warriors,
Yeah.
the ones who are always fighting for a better world, even if it means sacrificing their own well-being in the process.
Exactly. They have this intense drive to make a positive impact, to right wrongs, and to atone for any perceived failings.
I can respect that. But it also sounds kind of exhausting. What happens when guilt gets amplified with transference?
Well, with guilt, the transference is to hope, the second color. And at first glance, that might seem like a good thing, right? A little bit of optimism to lighten the load.
Yeah, it sounds like a welcome break from all that heavy guilt.
But here's the thing. When hope takes over for the 1-3 with guilt, it can create this delusional optimism. Instead of taking concrete action to address the issues that are weighing them down, they might start to believe that everything will magically work out on its own.
So instead of fighting for change, they're just hoping for the best. That doesn't sound very effective.
Exactly. It's important for these 1-3s to find a balance between their desire to make things better and their need to accept that they can't control everything. They need to channel their guilt into meaningful action without getting lost in unrealistic expectations.
Right, we're down to the last color. What's the sixth color for the 1-3 profile?
Last but not least, we have innocence. And this is where we see the 1-3 spiritual side come to the forefront.
Innocence. So we're talking about a 1-3 who's a bit more zen, a bit more detached from the dramas of the world.
You got it. The 1-3 with innocence is still an investigator at heart, but their pursuit of knowledge is driven by this pure curiosity, a desire to understand the world without any agenda or expectation.
They're like the spiritual seekers of human design, always looking for deeper meaning, but not getting caught up in dogma or rigid beliefs.
Exactly. They have this childlike wonder about the world approaching life with a sense of openness and awe. They're not trying to fix anything or prove anything. They're just observing, experiencing, and being.
That sounds pretty peaceful. But what happens when innocence gets messed up with transference?
Well, with innocence, the transference is to desire the third color. And this is where things can get a little tricky.
Desire.
Yeah.
So the peaceful observer suddenly gets hit with a wave of cravings. That doesn't sound very zen.
It can be a real mindfuck for these 1-3s. Suddenly, they're bombarded with desires for experiences, possessions, achievements. They might start to feel restless, dissatisfied, and like something is missing in their lives.
It's like they've tasted the forbidden fruit and now they can't go back to their innocent bliss.
Yeah, something like that. It's important for these 1-3s to recognize this transference and reconnect with their natural sense of contentment and appreciation for the present moment. They need to remember that true happiness comes from within, not from chasing after external things.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground here, going through all 6 colors and their transferences for the 1-3 profile. It's amazing to see how many variations there are, even within a single profile.
It just goes to show you how complex and nuanced human design can be.